Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yesterday, I played a video of a senior police officer in South Africa addressing his police officers and reminding them that they are there to defend every South African. The country is going through an election process, and the police is there to maintain law and order. And that regardless of who wins at the end of the day, they are civil servants. They were not voted into power, into those to become a police officer. And they will serve whoever has been elected by the South African people in a free, fair, and credible elections. That is to be commended. That is to be applauded. That is as it should be. Today, I've just been listening to this video here, which has been circulating in social media, where somebody is comparing President Ruto of Kenya speaking about the police and comparing and contrasting with the message that Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa gave in a similar situation. Let's just listen to this.
The police must not engage in matters politics. Don't take political sides. We have enough people to help us with our politics. We have political party operatives. We have activists. We have pressure groups and all manner of people who can help us with politics. We want the police to be independent and to protect every citizen irrespective of their political affiliation. It doesn't matter. We want you to protect our brothers in the opposition the same way you protect those who are in government, because we are one people, we all pay tax. And your job is to secure the property and the lives of all the citizens of the Republic of Kenya. The government of Kenya will defend every public officer, every policeman who does his job well and who refuses to carry out illegal, unconstitutional orders. Yeah, this is a country of the rule of law. That's why we have laws. So protect, especially ordinary people, the small people, ordinary Kenyans. Protect those ones.
We must be respected. We are majority. We are the people. We are the government. We are the army. We are the air force. We are the police. We are everything you can think of. We determine who can do mining in Zimbabwe. We determine who can construct a railway line in Zimbabwe. We determine who can build a road in Zimbabwe. No other party can do so.
Well, there is the contrast. In the one case, the people,
the police don't take political sides,
accepted that the police are there should be independent, they should protect everyone, they should maintain law and order. for the benefit of everyone, regardless of political affiliation. In Zimbabwe, we seem to have a totally different interpretation. The truth of the matter is, ever since Zimbabwe gained its independence, well, the fight for independence was to end white colonial oppression and exploitation. The reality is what emerged out of the independence was the mentality of what George Orwell summarized in his book Animal Farm as all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. What Robert Mugabe instilled in the independent Zimbabwe is a mentality that he and his fellow Zanu PF cronies, they are more equal than others. They are special. They deserve the choice fruit. They have the divine right to rule Zimbabwe. And they're willing to impose that right by imposing a de facto one-party state. Even the 1980 elections, they were not free, fair, and credible. Zanu PF and its operatives campaigned, made it very clear that if the party does not win the election, the Bush War would continue. The people chose to end the Bush War. And so their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country was compromised from the word go. And as soon as Robert Mugabe and his colleagues got their feet under the desk, they started to consolidate political power. The 1983 to 1987 Gukurahundi was totally uncalled for. But it was necessary as far as Mugabe was concerned. This was the opportunity to coerce the late Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his fellow ZAPU members to give up their claim to being another political party that challenged Zanu PF for power. They were coerced to give that up. And Zanu PF was prepared to commit the Gukurahundi massacre to achieve that objective. And in 1987, Dr. Nkomo and company threw in the towel. And they signed the Unity Accord. And that opened the door for Robert Mugabe to impose a de facto one-party state. And ever since, the country has been a de facto one-party state. Zanu PF would not brook anybody else ruling the country. Zanu PF has the divine right to rule the country. All this talk of every citizen of Zimbabwe should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country is of no consequence as far as Zanu PF is concerned. The right to free, fair, and credible election was ruled out. After 44 years of this de facto one-party state, we really need to stand up now and say, no, this is totally unacceptable. The police should be independent and should defend the rights of every citizen. The police should not be defending Zanu PF in their fight to impose the regime on the nation. But that is exactly what Zanu PF has been doing. Yesterday, I played a video of the South African police officer addressing the South African police force and reminding them all that their duty was to keep law and order and to make sure that they protect everyone, regardless of political affiliation. I believe South Africa has managed from the word go to have democratic institutions. And they've been able to keep them functional. The police being one of those democratic institutions, the judiciary being another, free media with its freedom of expression being another. We in Zimbabwe, we never enjoyed any of those. Ever since Mugabe and company got into power, the media has been changed so that it served Zanu PF. Before that, the media was constructed in such a way that it served the white minority regime. And instead of opening it up, Mugabe saw it as an opportunity to extend it. This time, the new master was Zanu PF. The judiciary, the same thing. Zanu PF saw to it that they promoted judges who were sympathetic to the regime's primary goal of making sure that Zanu PF retained absolute power at all costs. The same applies to the army. I think what we should now accept in Zimbabwe as a people is that we should have stood our ground and demanded our fundamental rights and freedoms all along. Yes, it is water under the bridge. Nonetheless, we should renew our demands for meaningful, free, fair, and credible elections with renewed energy and focus. I believe that Zimbabwe would have achieved significant democratic changes during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. SADC had denied Zanu PF political legitimacy following the 2008 elections and forced Mugabe and his colleagues to sign the Global Political Agreement of 2008, in which there was to be a government of national unity. And the primary purpose of the government was to implement the democratic reforms and thus stop the blatant cheating in the March 2008 election and the wanton violence which followed during the runoff. It is most unfortunate that that golden opportunity was wasted. I think what makes it even worse is that millions of ordinary Zimbabweans, even to this date, have failed to realize the importance of that GNU. The primary purpose of that GNU was to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. It is simply unbelievable that even now, with the benefit of hindsight, millions of ordinary Zimbabweans still fail to comprehend that. This has only allowed Zanu PF to get away with it. Because during the GNU, the one thing that Mugabe did was to bribe the opposition. He offered them the ministerial cars, the very generous salaries and allowances. And for Morgan Changira himself, he got the $4 million mansion in Highlands. And the whole MDC team forgot all about reforms. They failed to implement even one reform in the 5 years of the GNU, not even one reform. That is how bad things got. And to be quite honest, we, the people of Zimbabwe, have paid dearly for it. Because Zanu PF learned during that GNU that as long as they can bribe the opposition to participate in flawed elections, they'll be able to get legitimacy and thus avoid a repeat of the 2008 fiasco that led to the GNU. And so Zanu PF has offered a few gravy-train seats to the opposition to entice them to participate, regardless of how flawed the process may be. And that is exactly what has been happening here. And unfortunately, the ordinary Zimbabweans have failed to see what was happening. And therefore then have played along and paid the price for it. There can be no doubt that Chamisa knew that his promise that CCC would win the 2023 elections, for instance, was just nonsense. He claimed that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. That was just pure nonsense. How can you possibly claim something like that when you don't even have something as basic as a verified voters roll? But the very fact that people fell for it, millions of Zimbabweans participated in last year's elections, convinced that CCC would win big, goes to show that we have a problem with the electorate in Zimbabwe. I mentioned earlier on the statement by the South African police, reminding the police officers there that they are there to protect everybody. Contrast that with the statements issued by various police, army, top brass, who have publicly come out in support of Zanu PF. In 2008, we all remember how the top brass in the police, the army, the CIO all came out and said they would never salute anyone without Liberation War credentials. That should have been the signal to everybody to say, no, that is totally unacceptable. And that should have reminded us during the GNU that that must be changed. We must have democratic reforms that to make sure that the police from there on are non-partisan. We took our eyes off the ball. The opposition leaders, they were bribed to take their eyes off the ball. But we, the public, were so naive. We took our eyes off the ball. If we want to end the corruption, the mismanagement that has destroyed the Zimbabwe economy, the Zimbabwe economy is in ruins. After 44 years of Zanu PF corrupt and tyrannical rule, if we want to end it, we have to address it by starting with making sure we have free, fair, and credible elections. That is the prerequisite for having an accountable, a government that is accountable to the people. That's the prerequisite for good governance. It is not rocket science. We have just been listening to President Ruto there. What he's saying there makes sense. There can be no debate about that. It makes sense. So why is it that when Mnangagwa says the exact opposite, we accept it as if that too makes sense? I think the very idea that Zanu PF thinks that the police, the army, they own those institutions is an outrage, is an insult to every thinking Zimbabwean out there. And it's high time that we really seriously look into these issues and demand an end to this madness. Nobody's going to end it for us. We have to end it ourselves. If we want good governance, if we want freedom, if we want our human rights and dignity respected, we have to earn it. And when they've been denied, we have to stand up and be counted and fight for them. I don't think we have stood up and be counted and demanded change. Zimbabwe's next election is 2028. And unless people start demanding democratic reforms now, we will come to 2028 and we'll have yet another rigged election. And so Zanu PF will stay in power. The opposition will make the usual idiotic promises that they will win the elections, con us into participating, give Zanu PF legitimacy. And so the madness will continue. People get the government they deserve. That is at the heart of our problem. We have the government we deserve. This corrupt, tyrannical, and incompetent Zanu PF, complete with his entourage of equally corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless opposition. We have to end democratic government. It's not going to come out of thin air. Good governance, democracy, these things are like mangoes. If you want them, you have to end them. If they are being denied, you have got to demand them and fight for them. Zanu PF has denied ordinary Zimbabweans their fundamental freedoms and human rights and dignity for the last 44 years. If we seriously think that Zanu PF is someday going to turn around and say, okay, fine, we are going to allow you to do all these things, that is simply not going to happen. After 44 years in power, their hunger for power has increased, not diminished. They have now the opposition, the MDC and CCC, as we know them, in their own pockets. There's no doubt that Zanu PF is calling the shots. If there's one honest thing that Nelson Chamisa said in January when he resigned from his party, CCC, claiming that Zanu PF had infiltrated that party, he was being honest there. There's no doubt that Zanu PF has infiltrated CCC and controls it. And all his claim that he's going to launch another party, what's there to stop Zanu PF infiltrating that too? Particularly when we know that many of the people in CCC who participated in these flawed elections did so out of greed. And now they are licking their finger to test which direction of the wind is blowing. And they're desperate to get back onto that gravy train. They will change the party colors. Yellow, throw it away. From now on, they will wear blue. If that is what it will take for them to get back onto the gravy train. But at the end of the day, by participating in flawed elections, they will only give Zanu PF legitimacy and thus perpetuate the dictatorship. We can stop the dictatorship by demanding that there should be meaningful reforms, by demanding that the police should be independent and act in a non-partisan manner, as other countries like Kenya and South Africa have. It's for us to demand those things. Chamisa and company will pay lip service to those things. They have not implemented even one token reform in 23 years and counting. And to think that they will implement any reforms now is naive, to say the least. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.